There's so many things going on, especially in the United States and the world, that we wanted your political expertise and your thoughts on how we need to be dealing with these issues. Right? When
Mm-hmm.
you look at after the George Floyd movement,
Mm-hmm.
the gays got a law passed for them. The women got a law passed for them pertaining to forced arbitration.
Yeah.
But you still have the John Lewis
And there
Act.
was a federal Asian law, a federal Asian violence
Yeah, there
control law.
was, right. You still have the John Lewis Voting Rights Act sitting there. You still have the Freedom Act sitting there. All of these pertaining to that,
Yeah.
and nothing has happened. And even
And the Build Back Better Jobs plan is still in limbo.
and even in President Biden's speech, because when I listened to President Biden, this is the thing I thought about, right, James? When I was thinking about 2022, I said to myself, who does Biden sound like?
Right.
Right. And he made me think about Calvin Coolidge, right?
Yep.
Now, what people are like, well, what Calvin Coolidge? Where are you going? I said 100 years ago, Calvin Coolidge had all of these wonderful platitudes, and he talked about race and how Black people should be treated with dignity. I'm gonna read a statement that he said that I thought was very interesting, that people like to point to. He said the suggestion of denying any measure of their political rights to such a great group of our population as the colored people is one of which, however it might be received in some quarters, could not possibly be permitted by one who feels a responsibility for living up to the traditions and maintaining the principles of the Republican Party.
Wow.
And this is him talking about that back in 1920, I think it was 1923.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then he made another speech at Howard University where again he talked about Black people's contribution.
I did not know that.
World War One. He talked about
that.
their participation within society. All of these good things, and what makes me think about is Biden says the same type of things.
Right.
But guess what?
Right.
Back during that time, they were lynching was still going on in America, and they were trying to pass an anti-lynching law, and Congress wouldn't do it.
Yep.
So I make the analogy that right now they're trying to pass laws to enfranchise Black people, right? It's not to stop the disenfranchisement of them, and Congress won't do anything about it. It's 100 years later, and the same game is still going on.
Yep. Yep. You're right. And that's why I think, one of the most important books I've read is, I think it's about Huntington. Maybe it's not Huntington. It might be Schlesinger, but it's called The Cycles of American History. And it basically shows that every 30 years we go through the same thing. A new white generation emerges and plays the same game with us that the previous white generation did. Think about it. Like I said, mathematically, the hippies were the 60s militants. Mm-hmm. Now we're in the 2000s, 40 years later. They are the people in their 70s in power. And yet they've given us weed. They've given us all kind of sexuality rights, all kind of sexuality movements. Men can now compete with women as women in sports. And I sound like a bigot because I won't use specific pronouns and all of that. So now you are a bigot if you don't say him and her and they and their. This is deep, because I'm deeper than that. None of what people do and go through and their identities faze me, because I know death is the bottom line of life. And I know everything you claim you are don't mean it on the day you die. You can call yourself everything you want. When you dead, it don't mean nothing. Death is the end of everything. So all of this stuff we play with in the meantime, I don't even take most of it seriously, because I know death is the bottom line. And that may be morbid, but actually it awakens you to life and its reality. To accept that body makes you aware that you need to get busy living, like they said in Shawshank Redemption, instead of dying.
John Oliver Killian, he wrote this book called Black Psyche. And I just gave the short title of it. But he said something. He made a quote that I really like, and it makes me think about how does that apply to society today, especially to Black people. He said, Black people live in a hand-to-mouth existence, and our planning for liberation tends to be hand-to-mouth. But hand-to-mouth planning will not win the human race, will not topple this capitalistic white supremacist establishment. And so hand-to-mouth planning.
Yeah.
When you have people that's sitting up in Congress talking about Barbara Lee talking about, oh, well, we're so glad that we'll be able to have enough votes to form a commission on reparations.
Right.
There doesn't need to be one more damn study.
Nothing.
There's enough scholarly stuff out there already to tell you about the impact of racism on Black America. You don't need to study it.
Across generations, even if we stop at slavery, let's say in 1900, right? For the next 100 years, state-sponsored system underdeveloped Black America and overdeveloped white America artificially. If you look at the end of my book on Black nationalism, you'll see I cite a study that is designed to measure the outcomes and the sort of the state affairs related to that would make Martin Luther King's dream a reality. So are Blacks doing well with education? How are they doing with jobs? How are they doing with home ownership? Things of that sort. And in that study, that's in the last passage of my book on Black nationalism, it says that Black people in America on home ownership alone, not other wealth, just homes, with 106 years to catch up to average white people. That's how bad slavery was, Jim Crow, and having the most powerful government in human history, more powerful than Rome, China, and anything else that has come against you, where you are the number one enemy of the most important and most powerful entity have ever made. That's who Black America is, right in the belly of the beast. And so their game is always because we're in a colonized situation as a minority population. Their game is to make sure we never get what we need to be full, to be whole. Their white people's interest and the government's interest is to make sure we're never fully whole because we complete so many social categories at the bottom in terms of fueling and funding systems of oppression, like the mass incarceration, probation, child support systems, family court systems. The war on drugs was a crime against Black America by the American government.
Right.
That deserves reparations by itself. And we must talk about reparations and the war on drugs, not just Jim Crow and not just slavery. We got to talk about reparations because that's ongoing. That's now. That's not historical. Everybody's not dead. We're seeing on a regular basis the exoneration of people through the Innocence Project.
But see, this is the thing I want to say again about Biden and why I thought about Calvin Coolidge. Most people don't know how Calvin Coolidge came to the 30th president of the United States came into prominence. And it goes back to the comments you were making about the Boston police, right? He became famous because the Boston Police Department went on strike. And then he, in Massachusetts, broke that strike.
Wow.
And fired all of the people. He sounded like Reagan, didn't he? He fired all of the police.
You got me taking notes.
And fired all of the people. And came to the notice of the National Republican Party because he was a law and order person.
Really?
And so when Biden got into trouble, what did he do? He ran back to law and order, didn't he?
Oh,
in his speech.
Didn't he?
His speech, he ran back to law and order. We're not going to defund the police.
Racist Scalise stood up. Him and McCarthy stood up clapping. That's the only time the Republicans stood up. And yet they sat there and watched police get beat half to death and get to beat to death and kill them from suicide related to January 6th. And yet the Republicans sitting there acting like they're still pro-police when all they are is white racists who want to use police as a symbol to keep Black people in check, even though they are the ones that attacked the police and beat the police and humiliated the police. And these officers are still dealing with the consequences of January 6th. So this system, the American state, is dominated by white males. White men are 90% of the judges, 90% of the police. White men are 33% of the US population, but they're twice as represented in enforcement than they are in society. You can't fix racism and white supremacy until you fix these kind of institutional advantages that groups have been given because of their race.
So the question that's coming to mind to me, James, is the article that Du Bois wrote in 1948. We talked about why he's not going to vote. And then when we listened to a speech that Biden made that didn't have anything in there that spoke to Black people or the Black community or the promises he made to Black people, but tried to, again, do what Clinton did and stuff, and again move the party back to the center,
right,
and forget about our particular issues.
right.
What do black people say to themselves in this particular situation?
Well, I think you got to distinguish between black people and black Democrats. You know, the partisans, they're going to stick with Biden no matter what. They'll stick.
Yeah, they took all of the photo shots.
They'll support any white Democrat. They'll
Yeah.
support a white racist Democrat. Black Democrats will support an openly white racist. I mean, Biden. I like Biden as a human being. His story is compelling, but I know in his heart he ain't nothing but a racist. Not an anti-black racist, but one of them old white folk that just had, you know, white opinion, like Obama being a clean Negro kind of thing, you know, or one that tells you if you don't vote, you ain't black, right? He supported all of the tough on crime laws on black. He was with Clinton with the draconian notion of super predator. Oh, Biden was all in that. Biden was writing the legislation. Biden wrote the legislation. Biden was over the Clarence Thomas hearings. Biden is appointing a black woman after he destroyed one. He's appointing Ketanji Brown Jackson, but we forget Biden was the dude overseeing the Anita Hill thing. This is his redemption. That even in the Ukraine right now, where on both sides they're anti-black. The Ukrainians are anti-African, and Putin has been racist since he used the internet to try to trick black people in the 2016 election. I despise Putin because he is a betrayal of Claudia Jones, Du Bois, Robeson, and all of these black leftists, the black left that told black America that we should embrace Moscow and embrace communism. Ultimately, it's not racist. And now they want to say Putin ain't a communist to justify Russia being racist. But Russia is lined up. I don't care what you think Stalinism and Leninism and Trotskyism and Boris Yeltsinism related to Putinism is. You can play these games and try to distance communism from Putin and from Russia, but y'all lied to us. Y'all told us Russia was the alternative. Communism was the alternative in the world to capitalism's racism. And now in the 21st century, Putin is the loudest racist on the planet. He's a racist, a pale little punk white boy. But Putin and the Ukrainians are anti-black. So what the hell we care? Only concern we got is whether or not these devils are going to lead to the Third World War. We've always been on the outside looking. Hell, America's bombing right now while we're speaking. Ain't nobody caring about America bombing black Muslims and black people in Africa right now. It's happening now. Biden was the one who beat black people on the borders of Mexico, the Haitians, like they were slaves in the 19th century. You saw that yourself. And that was the Democrats that did that. So what the hell you care about black people? Or the Ukrainians care about black people? We saw how the Ukrainians are literally being just explicitly racist. And then on the other end in Poland, I'm saying to you that it's deep that on the other end of the Ukraine, where these Africans are trying to get to be so they can go home. They're racist in white racists in Ukraine, white racists in Poland. So black folk getting all caught up, putting these yellow and blue flags on their social media, take that down. Put up the Garvey flag. Put up the red, black, and green flag. Because when this is all done, the Ukrainians are still going to be white people.